Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode of Let's Talk About It. And today we are going to be continuing our series of doing a deep dive into every single NBA team before this upcoming season. This episode, we are going to be starting our run with the Eastern Conference, starting out with the Boston Celtics, the defending NBA champions. Before we get into it, make sure to leave a like on the video. It helps the channel out a ton, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for our upcoming NFL and also still NBA content on the way. But getting right into the Boston Celtics, obviously coming off of a championship, but it's going to be another interesting year because I feel like the Eastern Conference, as top-heavy as it is, I feel like all the top teams have gotten better in some way to compete with Boston at the top of the East. I do think that Boston is still the top dog out East, and I think they're still the best team in the NBA when they're fully healthy. But I think there are some circumstances where at the top of that Eastern Conference, I think that they do have some weaknesses, and some matchup-based teams could give them more trouble than not. But we can get into that down the line. But this Celtics one is going to be kind of different from the other kind of deep dives because we kind of know about the Celtics team. They brought back pretty much the same roster. We know what they're going to be about. We know they're going to probably be the odds-on favorite to repeat and go back-to-back. That's how good this team is. But I more so wanted to talk about getting into the X Factor, which I think the X Factor is Kristaps Porzingis still. The team just looks completely different when he's out there and he's healthy. I mean, you could see it in that game one against Dallas, and then them getting to the finals without him that entire run is impressive enough. But you saw the impact he has, the ability to protect the rim, the ability to space the floor on offense. He just opens up the game so much for this Boston Celtics team, so where I really do think, impact-wise, I definitely think he just has this like gravity. Like when he's out there, the paint is really held down a lot more, especially against a team like Dallas who has athletic bigs, but they don't really have like aggressive attackers, if that makes sense. So that's where I felt like Kristaps, especially in that game one, helped set the tone for what Boston wanted to do, even though he didn't really play much the rest of the series due to injury. But I think his health is a big X factor because I feel like with him on the court, the team is just operating on a whole different level than when he is off, just because of what he can provide them from the big spot. It's like Al Horford provides them like that same kind of spacing in a way, but the rim protecting it from the defensive side of the ball, I think Kristaps Porzingis is just a mismatch for a lot of people. Like when you talk about that Dallas series, especially in that game one where he was getting off, it's like those looks where he's just on the elbow, on the top of the key, and he's able to just raise up and shoot over, and he can just take his man one-on-one at times because you can't help off of Derek White or Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, etc. So looking at that, I think he is the biggest X factor. His health, and it's crazy because they went to the finals basically without him. His health is huge, especially for this team in the regular season. Expectations, I think this team could easily get back to 60 wins. I think they're that good. It all depends on how healthy they are, but even if they do to get an injury to say Kristaps Porzingis, I think they will be fine unless Al Horford just falls off the face of the earth because of his age, which even then, I kind of think Xavier Tillman has shown you enough to where like even if Al Horford isn't playing the best ball, Xavier Tillman can give you enough with how much talent is on this team. But my expectation is for this team to be the odds-on favorite going into the season to win the NBA championship once again. But this is another question I want to get into because there's not really a whole lot to talk about this team that are defending NBA champions and they're bringing back basically the same roster. What is the biggest threat to the Boston Celtics out east? Because you got to think the Knicks got better. Sixers got a lot better. I think the Bucks got better. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but I think the Bucks had a really, really good offseason due to what they had to work with. I think the Pacers are going to be better with a year of experience and development for that young team over there. I think Orlando adding KCP, maybe not put them in the top echelon of teams in the East, but I think they're going to be better. They're a team that can sit down and guard. And then you're talking about Cleveland. That group of teams I feel like is the top of the Eastern Conference, if you will. But the biggest threat, I think, to the Boston Celtics is definitely the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm going to say it's the Milwaukee Bucks and kind of the 76ers because when you look at this Boston Celtics team, they are tailor-made to be able to neutralize great opposing teams' guards. When you look at their series versus Miami, for example, when Tyler Hero was the main ball handler, he struggled. When you look at Tyrese Halliburton when they played the Pacers, he really struggled, especially late in games with the ball pressure that Drew Holiday and Derek White were putting on him. And then you go to the finals with Luka and Kyrie, a backcourt that was getting the hype before they went into the finals of one of the most dangerous backcourts of all time. That's the hype that they were getting. when they beat the Minnesota Timberwolves in the conference finals, and Boston absolutely, now I'm not going to say shut Kyrie down, but made life extremely hard on Kyrie Irving with Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Jaylen Brown taking on that defensive assignment of a Luka Doncic because he is just bigger than a Drew Holiday and a Derek White. Taking on that assignment, Luka's obviously going to get his, but you saw how this team is tailor-made to beat guards. Like I said, Kristaps Porzingis is in the rim protection as well, but his health is a concern as well. I think it's the Bucks because they have an interior force like a Giannis Antetokounmpo, who I don't think Kristaps Porzingis can really do anything with how physical and how strong Giannis does get downhill. It's just all about Giannis staying healthy. And if Giannis is healthy, he was putting up MVP caliber numbers this year. He just got hurt towards the back half of the year, which I'm glad they signed him out because I think this was a kind of a wash year for them anyways. I feel like now they have the right connecting pieces and tools to go make a better playoff run. But I think they're the biggest threat to the Celtics. I think you still have a Chris Middleton who maybe is getting up there in age, but still played phenomenal basketball in the playoffs against the Pacers. You know what you're going to get out of Damian Lillard. Now this is year 2 in a new situation for him. I feel like he's going to be better acclimated. This is going to be a team that's going into the season with Doc Rivers instead of picking a head coach up middle of the year. So I think this is going to be a way better unit. I like the addition of a Gary Trent Jr., and I think they're the biggest threat to the Boston Celtics because I think the Milwaukee Bucks have the best 1-2 punch to go at the Celtics in the Eastern Conference. And I just think Giannis as an interior presence can give the Boston Celtics a lot of trouble because they are thin at that center position. Say if Kristaps Porzingis does go down, Al Horford is up there in age and Xavier Tillman is undersized at his position already. So I feel like, not saying if Kristaps Porzingis was hurt, because even if he wasn't hurt, I think the Bucks still would give the Boston Celtics the most problems out of all those teams I kind of just named in the East. And I think they would be a great matchup. I still would probably favor Boston, but I think Milwaukee definitely poses the biggest threat. And I also want to kind of chime in and talk about the Sixers because I still have to see it, how everything works out and how everything flows together over there in Philly. But you add a Paul George over there, and then you have Joel Embiid, who, like I said, on the Giannis side of things, is a big interior presence that can cause the Boston Celtics a lot of problems. But the only thing with Joel Embiid is we know it comes down to health. So if I'm talking about the biggest threats I feel like to Boston, I think it's definitely the Bucks and the Sixers, kind of because they have two interior dominating forces that can really get into the lane and really muck things up for the Boston Celtics, because I think they're more oriented and built to stop opposing teams' guards, if you get what I'm saying. But going into the main question I do have for the Boston Celtics is pretty cut, pretty dry. Kind of been talking about him the whole video. Can KP stay healthy? Because I think that this year, going into it, that playoff run is going to be a lot harder than it was this previous year. When you think of all those teams I just named, I feel like every single one of them found a way to get better. And I just think the road to the finals is going to be a lot tougher next year, especially if all these teams are healthy. You got to knock on wood with that as always. But I think his health is huge, because if he's not healthy, I don't know if this team does find a way to get back to the finals, especially when you talk about the matchups that they would have to go up against and the teams that have gotten better out east. I do think they're the favorite going into the season, but his health is going to be a big, big thing for the Celtics. If he's healthy, I still think they get back to the finals. If he's not, I really do start to have questions about, especially if who they play and the matchups that go along with that. But that is really all I have for the Boston Celtics and this deep dive. Thank you guys for tuning into the Barrel Talk podcast. Hope to see you tune in to future episodes.